Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. It's a cold and rainy November day here in Portland, so I'm down in the basement, and I'm taking a look at this machine today. It looks like a regular TRS-80 Model 4, well, a really dirty one, but I'm told not all is as it seems with this machine. So in this video, we're gonna dig into this thing and take a look inside and see exactly what's going on in here. So without further ado, let's get right to it. With the camera a little closer, you can see the condition of this machine is, well, it's pretty filthy. So with that said, I'm gonna apply some gloves to my hands here so that I don't get completely filthy working on this machine. Plus, let's be honest, nothing matches the flannel I'm wearing better than these teal gloves. So first, let me talk about how I acquired this machine. This machine was given to me very recently by Tim Linder, and if you know the TRS-80 CoCo community, you're probably familiar with Tim. He now lives up in Portland here, and he asked me if I would like to get this machine from him and maybe do a video about it. Well, when he told me what might be going on with this thing, which I'm not gonna spoil yet in the video, I was like, absolutely. So looking at the outside of this machine, it definitely appears to be a TRS-80 Model 4 top cover. It is missing the badge here, but otherwise the white plastic color gives away that it's a TRS-80 Model 4. If you know your TRS-80s though, this keyboard looks to be one from a TRS-80 Model 3. There's some slight differences in the layout and whatnot on the Model 4 keyboard, so this is definitely a Model 3 keyboard. The Model 3 also always had a monochrome CRT, and I'm just looking at the color of the phosphor on here, and this might actually be green phosphor, although we won't know until, well, we open this thing up, or maybe I'm even able to power this computer up. Taking a look at the bottom edge of the computer though, we can see here that the bottom of the case has the familiar silver paint color of the TRS-80 Model 3. So that would sort of indicate that this machine's a little bit of a cursed machine, which is an assemblage of various parts from all sorts of different things. Looking at the top of the computer, besides the extreme level of filth that's on here, we can see that there are two knobs here for some reason. And do they turn? Yes, they're pretty scratchy, but oh, this one appears to be an on-off volume control. Like that's off, on, and then a volume control, and this one just appears to turn partially. So what's going on with that exactly? On the back of the computer, we have a TRS-80 mini disc sticker. So this has nothing to do with the Model 3 or Model 4. This came off of a disk drive from maybe a Model 1. Looking down here on the back of the machine where the power cord goes in, we can see something funny is going on. There's normally a metal plate here with a fuse, and there's no power switch, but that's just where the power cord goes on, and something strange is going on, and there's a wire in there, and you know, who knows exactly what's happened here, and if we keep rotating the computer around, well, there's nothing on this side except a lot of scuffs and filth. Looking back on the front of the machine again, we can see here that there's a crack in the plastic around the CRT bezel, and there's also one right down here. It looks like someone has tried to glue that at some point, and it's not the prettiest repair, but maybe it works, in quotes. I just wanted to get a close-up here of the dirt on the keyboard. I think this thing was found in a barn or somewhere, obviously, where it was exposed to a lot of elements for a long time and it was uncovered. So I'm not quite so sure about repairing this keyboard. Now it is an Alps SKCC keyboard. You can see a switch right there that's been broken off, and that switch does work, but unfortunately with these switches, if they're exposed to a lot of dirt, the dirt can actually get inside and then they don't work very well. And they're not always easy to disassemble and clean the contact plate because it's usually plastic heat stake together. It's possible, but it's a lot of work. Over here on this side of the keyboard, we can see the original badge that was from the machine that this keyboard came out of, at least, with a little Windex on a cloth here. Let's see if I can expose what that was exactly. And there it is, 64K. That's actually a little confusing to me because I'm pretty sure that this is a Model 3 keyboard and the maximum size of RAM in the Model 3 was 48K. So this badge must have come from something else. Now one thing is for sure, I think a little bit of cleaning will go a long way with this machine. I'm just gently wiping here and a lot of filth is coming off, but we now have a clean spot under there. And of course the same goes for the CRT. The glass is probably pretty sturdy there. Oh, there's a dead spider. And look at that, nice clean spot. Looking at this side of the machine again, it seems that down at the bottom here, there's a rather large gap, and this top cover isn't even attached. So I think the next logical thing for me to do is try to remove this top cover from this computer, and let's reveal what secrets lie within. The normal way to take these lids off of these computers is to lift them off and put them off onto the side, because there's a bunch of wires attached between the CRT, which stays on the top part here, and the bottom board. Now what's going on inside this, I'm not exactly sure, so I'm gonna try to do, the normal removal procedure and just see what happens. Hope I don't break anything inside. Oh my, what is going on inside of this machine? Wow, 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 wow. All right, well, one thing you might notice right away taking a look inside of this machine is that it's very different inside here than a regular TRS-80 Model 3 or Model 4, but also whatever computer might have existed inside of here, and I don't mean the TRS-80 Model 3 or 4, but there would have been a different computer that was put in here. That computer is no longer inside this machine. Someone has actually gone ahead and removed it. But they've left a lot of things behind in here, so let's see what exactly is left in here. So let's start with the monitor, which we can just see. This board right here, clearly, which isn't really even properly attached, this is not what was originally inside of the Model 3 or Model 4. The original CRT board for the Model 3 and 4, it mounts over on the side here. This is definitely maybe out of a television or something, because take a look, there's a speaker in here that connects to that board. As I look at this machine more, things pop out. So right here, you see the tuner. So that board over there would have been from a TV set originally, and we have the TV tuner, UHF and VHF, and there's coax wire here. So this was grafted into here from a television set of some kind. Now it's possible that CRT there is the one that came out of the Model 4, and Model 4s typically have green CRTs. But believe it or not, a black and white TV from the late 70s into the early 80s, especially a solid state one, like the one we just saw, that board in here, uses the same CRT. The connector's the same and everything, you just have to switch the deflection yoke over. And down here under the pile of parts is what looks like a regular RCA RF connection. So that kind of gives you an idea, the computer that would have been in here must have been connected to this TV set with RF on channel 3. Now there seems to be a big pile of parts here. What's this? There's a box here, and inside there's a little bit of, I don't know, wire wrap wire, and it looks like it's actually a cassette holder that's cracked and falling apart. We also have this, which is, I don't know what this is. Looks like, oh, it's just a little extension cable of some kind. Okay. We have a green wire here, which is a very sketchy ground cable that goes from the CRT DAG here over to, I guess, this power supply board over here. Okay. I just pulled this out of here. This is a cable for a cassette drive or cassette player for a TRS-80, well, either Model 1, Model 3, maybe the Model 4, but also the CoCo. They all use the same exact cable. And then right here, we have what looks like floppy drive controller, and I'm gonna wager that this is for a TRS-80 CoCo or color computer. It's been removed from its case, still got the floppy drive controller cable on it, and I think with that should give you an idea of exactly what was actually in this machine originally. It was a TRS-80 color computer motherboard, a CoCo, inside of a TRS-80 Model 3 and Model 4 case. What's going on here, according to Tim Linder, is what's called a TRS-80 color computer or repack. Basically taking a computer, it doesn't have to be another TRS-80, gutting it and shoehorning in a TRS-80 color computer motherboard into it. Tim did a little research and found that this was not an unheard of thing to do back in the day. And I guess with this machine, someone had an old TRS-80 Model 3 and Model 4 parts machine, maybe with a broken top, and a color computer, and they wanted to combine it into an all-in-one TRS-80 color computer with built-in dual disk drives. Speaking of the disk drives, there's a power supply in here, and this looks like one, I think, from the TRS-80 Model 4. And essentially, this would have been used originally to power up the disk drives, but also the original motherboard, which on this case actually sits right here in the back. It actually rises up vertically with the ports going down through the bottom of the computer. That has obviously all been removed, and I think that this power supply here is probably left behind only to power up these floppy drives. In fact, I can see a cable right here that goes to the top drive, and there are connectors right here on the power supply board to connect that up. So I don't know why this one's off, but it should be connected there. This other cable that's on here goes to the bottom floppy drive. Now the TRS-80 color computer itself needs some additional voltage rails I don't think this power supply can supply, although it might actually supply that stuff. But it looks like here, there is part of what was the original TRS-80 color computer transformer power supply. This takes the mains input, and then it has these connectors that go onto the motherboard. And the original TRS-80 color computer, the power supply itself is on the main motherboard. So obviously the color computer motherboard has been removed from this case at some point, but that power supply was left behind, and so was this floppy drive controller card, which is normally plugged into the cartridge port. Because this power supply, the TRS-80 color computer power supply, and the TV set all require power, this distribution block here was set up to distribute the mains AC to all the various components in here. And I gotta say, the wiring is it's pretty sketchy in here. Pretty sketchy. The last component to making a good CoCo repack would be a working keyboard. And this keyboard is actually screwed down here, and it has a ribbon cable attached to it. And taking a look at this, this is actually the connector that connects to the CoCo. This is definitely a different connector than would have been going to the original TRS-80 Model 3 motherboard. So this thing must have been rewired. In fact, there's a little bit of this wire wrap wire right here. It's just sort of hanging there. I don't know where that goes. That might be for the reset button, because the reset signal on the CoCo is not carried over the keyboard cable. I think it would go directly to the motherboard. So I have a feeling the reset button was wired up with this little blue wire here and was just left behind. Let me grab a screwdriver so we can take a look underneath this keyboard and see what exactly has gone on here. Looking at what's inside this computer, other than the fact that the motherboard is missing, all the other constituent parts are here to actually make a successful repack. And just imagine back in the day seeing a TRS-80 Model 3 or Model 4, whatever this thing looks like, but actually showing graphics in grayscale on the internal monitor from the internal CoCo that was inside of here. All right, the keyboard has been extricated. Let me lift off this top bezel piece here. All looks pretty normal under there, except that it's very dirty. And very interesting, taking a look underneath here, it looks like the modifications are not as extreme as I would have thought for this thing. I would have assumed that the entire matrix would be completely different and the whole thing would have been rewired, but there's just a handful of these actual bodge wires on here, which is a lot less than I would have thought. That is pretty amazing. And exactly like I had thought, these two wires here that were just sort of hanging loose, they go to the reset button, which is right here, which would have gone to some point on the motherboard to allow that to actually do the reset. So it's definitely a bit of a shame this keyboard is so dirty, but you know what? It may still work. So with a little TLC, taking this thing apart, good cleaning, getting all these needles and stuff out of here by vacuuming them out, maybe this thing is gonna work again. Now, the funny thing is, when Tim gave me this computer, he had a thought that there might not be a motherboard in here. He didn't actually look in here, but the reason why he thought that is in all the stuff that he got this machine with, he found this, which is a TRS-80 CoCo 1 motherboard, but it has one telltale sign that this might have been the motherboard that actually was in here, and it's this right here. The cartridge connector on the CoCo normally goes out this direction because you plug cartridges in from the side, but this cartridge connector has been replaced with one that makes it right angle, which kind of goes with the fact that a disk controller would have been in here and would have been plugged into the motherboard like this somehow in here, so it didn't short out to everything else that was in here, so that this is most likely the board that was in here. Now, I haven't done any testing on this motherboard, so I have no idea if this works. Look, it's got the original shielding on the bottom there. The motherboard looks like it's about the right size where it should fit in here and actually allow the top cover to close and not be a total safety hazard. And perhaps the original owner decided to restore the CoCo back to its original, I don't know, configuration and take this thing out and stick it back into another case or who knows what. Although it's sort of weird that the original power supply here, or the transformer at least, which normally connects right here to the motherboard, was left inside of here while just the motherboard was taken out. I am not 100% familiar with the CoCo 1 motherboard, like all the different versions, but this one appears to be missing a chip in this socket, which I'm assuming is a ROM chip. So I don't know if that's been pillaged or what, but I'll have to do a little bit of research. But the RF connection that's right here would have plugged into that coax cable that was floating around back there that went into that tuner there. So that channel 3 would have actually received the signal from this board. It's just hilarious. It really is funny. Before working on this machine on the bench, I wanted to give it a little bit of a clean, especially the keyboard, because I knew I'd need to be using the keyboard in case the motherboard actually works. So a little vacuuming, a little cleaning with some Windex, and it looks a lot better now, let's just say. Also, while I had the vacuum out, I decided to vacuum up some of the dirt inside the machine, so that's a little bit less dirty as well. So there's clearly quite a bit more work to do, but I think the next logical step is to try to get this CoCo 1 motherboard working, or at least tested. The cleaning of the keyboard came out pretty good, actually. I mean, it was just a surface cleaning. I didn't even take the keycaps off, but I think at this point, it's not so horrible to type on. And obviously this top plate with a little scrubbing and a little bit of 303 plastic UV protection restore made it look black and nice again. I also gave the floppy controller card a little bit of a clean under the tap with some soap and water. And other than the contacts here looking a little worse for wear, it's in pretty good shape now. Now, I pointed out before that this has a right angle cartridge connector here and would allow me to plug this card in like this, sticking up. But I don't think that would actually work inside the TRS-80. I don't think there's quite enough room in there because of where the monitor and stuff is. So this little cable was inside there, and I think what this is a little extension cord that would plug into the cartridge slot there. And that means I think it should plug into this connector like so. And I'm assuming that inside the computer there was like a piece of cardboard or something that this was probably resting on like that. And then the floppy cable obviously plugs in right there. I'm gonna pull this out and we'll get back to trying this out in a moment once I know that this motherboard actually works. I took the transformer out of there and it did have an extra wire soldered on that basically supplies power to the rest of the system. It goes to that distribution block. So I put some tape over there just to keep that from being exposed. I have this little TV hooked up. It's set for channel 3. It's hooked up to the RF output here. And I think at this point, let's turn this on and see what happens. Aha, there we go. So we have garbage. It's a good clear image, but it's obviously not working. I guess the question is, this ROM that's missing here, is that something that I need for this operation of this computer, or is that something that's actually not needed? Okay, I did a little bit of reading, and that's the extended basic ROM. This is the regular basic ROM, and the computer should work perfectly without the extended basic. So I have the Retro Chip Tester Pro out. Let's give this basic ROM a little bit of a test, make sure it's good. Pin 20 low is the correct way to do it. Let's read it, and hopefully it should calculate. Okay, it's TRS-80 Basic 1.1, and so this ROM is good. So let's put some Deoxit here, and this is definitely the right chip. Pop that back in there, and let's power this up, and unfortunately, absolutely no change. So there's something else the matter here. I gave all the chips a little bit of a push, and it's still not working. Okay, another 6809 in there. And unfortunately, it's working exactly like it did with the original CPU. So I'm gonna guess that the original CPU is probably okay. And unfortunately, there's another problem. Well, it's clear that this motherboard needs more troubleshooting and repair than just a quick CPU swap. I thought I'd get lucky because I just happen to have a CPU handy, but unfortunately that is not the case. So I'm gonna end this video here, and it's gonna be in part 2 that I get this motherboard working, and then also try to get the rest of everything else working inside that carcass, like the television set that's in there, the power supply for those floppy drives, and also see if this keyboard is working, because to be honest, I think this keyboard might be a big problem with all of those key switches and all that filth that's basically inside of there. So if you found this video interesting about the crazy CoCo repack, thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. If you have experience with these repacks or you've ever seen something like this, I would love to hear more about it. So put comments down below so I can read about it, and I'll pin any interesting comments that you make. And then thanks to my patrons, their names are scrolling up the side of the screen. Huge thank you for all the support they give me. And if you want to become a patron to get behind the scene access and early access to videos and whatnot, of course, there's a link in the description. and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you know, all the other YouTube stuff. And I guess that is gonna be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.